Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Staci.
And I'm your co-host, Sarah.
And today we are talking about Quebec.
Quebec, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
We have been on a movie kick during our podcast lately, and so I am going to quote the movie Meet the Robinsons, where they refer to Canada as Northern Montana.
Yes, of course it is.
Sorry, Canada, you've just been relegated. Canada's huge, and now it's Northern
really
Montana.
Well, and again, I think we talked on a previous episode about how the name for Canada is the Village, even though it's this big, sprawling country, the Village.
Yes.
But actually, I got interested in Quebec. I read a book called A Great Reckoning by... I've completely forgotten the author's name, but it's one of the Inspector Armand Gamache mysteries. Mm-hmm. And it was the first one I'd read. I just read it because it was part of our book club. But I didn't know anything about it going into it. And so as I'm reading it, I thought we were in like a really quaint French village in like the 1950s because he's out in the middle of nowhere somewhere in Quebec. But the fact that they kept talking half the time in French and just throwing in French words in the middle of English because the book is in English, it was like, oh, this feels so... it's like, you know, being in Europe, but still being in North America. So without having to, you know, go overseas, I can get all my European feelings, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, they do speak French in many parts of Canada. They do recognize the Queen in many parts of Canada. So you get a little European flair there.
Right. Well, and Quebec is especially interesting because French is the sole provincial official language in Quebec, even though the rest of Canada is, you know, English.
Right.
But because they speak it in Quebec, and Quebec is the largest province by area, that's why on a lot of like language maps, Canada shows up for both English and French, even though it's mostly just this one province, but the province is huge.
Right.
And they're like, French is official, so we're going to stick with French. Yes.
You know how a lot of people do try to they try to visit all 50 states. Mm-hmm. I think I need to add visiting the 10 Canadian provinces to that list because I have not been to Canada despite growing up, 2 hours from the border my entire life.
Southern Montana.
Yeah.
Oh man, we need to stop. Canada, we apologize. You are your own country.
We love you, okay. Canada.
Clearly, we're doing an episode about Quebec. But interestingly, about 94% of the total population of Quebec can speak French, while only 47% or so can speak English. And it's like, really? But really? Canada is part of the British. I don't even know what the whole system is with Britain right now, with Australia and all the former colonies that are now their own countries, but still part of the Britain something, you know?
Commonwealth? I don't know if that's the word.
I'm going to go with Commonwealth. Let's use that. Part of the British Commonwealth. So you tend to think of it as, you know, oh, they speak English, except somehow kind of with an American accent because half the time I cannot tell unless you told me you were Canadian, if you were Canadian.
Or until you say the word aboot.
Or eh. We don't say eh, we say huh. But people say eh, I'm like, huh? What? But anyways, in 2006, the House of Commons of Canada passed a symbolic motion reckoning the Quebecois, the sort of, I don't want to say Creole of Canada, but that's kind of how they feel to me, that they're somewhat different from English-speaking Canadians, but they're also somewhat different from French people, that they're their own special...
They're French-Canadian.
Thing. Quebecois, they have their own word. Quebecois as a nation within a united Canada. So it is its own place, but still in Canada. So it's right there.
It's a place within a place, which is always fun.
So place I'd like to go in Canada, I mean, I kind of just want to take like a summer to explore Quebec, because again, Canada is a big place, and Quebec being the largest province is also a big place, but it's kind of spread out.
Right.
There's Montreal, which is of course the city, and everyone knows they speak French there, and that's where, you know, you get like Cirque du Soleil. I remember watching a documentary for one of the Cirque du Soleil shows, and I knew in the back of my head, because the name is Cirque du Soleil, so you can hear it's in French, but it still threw me off to like watch them speaking in French all the time and have to be like reading the subtitles, even though I'm like, wait, but you're just in Canada,
right?
Why do I speak English? I don't understand. Oh wait, that's right. You speak French there, and it just sounds so cool, even though, you know.
I just love that some people want to spend a summer backpacking through Europe. You want to spend the entire summer in Quebec.
It's a large place to explore. It would probably take more than the summer to fully explore.
I'm sure,
that whole province. Mm-hmm. But if I had to choose a specific place, I'd want to go to Quebec City, and that's not just because it also has the name Quebec in it, although that would be a very simple reason of I'm going to Quebec, where Quebec City. I'm going to Quebec City in Quebec. Yes, just all the Quebecs. I'm going there. But no, that's not why. Quebec City has a lot of interesting things about it. There's old Quebec, especially because, again, I like the idea of going to Europe without having to go to Europe. Oh, poor me. I need to work on that. I really do. But I think they maybe just changed this recently, but it did used to be that you didn't have to have a passport to go to Canada, right?
You do now, but you can have the card. You don't have to take your full passport. You can have the identification card for Canada and Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, if I had gone a little earlier, I wouldn't have needed my passport, which is great because my passport expired. So I'd be saved that whole hassle, which would definitely be required going anywhere in Europe. But in Old Quebec sort of feels like an old world French village. It's 400 years old, and you can sort of see it in the architecture and in the, you know, the stone streets and all that. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's the only walled city north of Mexico.
Interesting.
Which, yeah,
we don't really do walled cities here.
Yeah.
For people who may not be familiar with UNESCO World Heritage Sites, do you want to explain that a little more?
So, UNESCO World Heritage Sites. UNESCO is put on by the UN, right? That's what the UN part of UNESCO means.
I believe so.
It's them certain, I don't think there's a specific number, but places around the world that are seen to be, you know, historically or archaeologically important are marked as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and that gives them a bit of, I guess, protection from the forces of modernization.
So it's kind of like being on the historical society's
something,
you know, kind of, but on a global scale.
Right. Yeah. So you can't, you know, just tear it down to build condominiums or whatever. Once it's on the World Heritage Site, that's a level of protection. And it also makes it a big tourist draw, which is part of that protection is, oh, hey, now you're on the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. That's a place I really need to go. And so it gives them a reason, you know, most definitely not to tear these places down. Right. Because tourists want to come and see historical sites.
And I know that there were battles fought, you know, before the American Revolution.
The French and Indian War.
Yeah, and so is that why Quebec is a walled city? Is part of, you know, that? I mean, I don't even know.
I don't know why Quebec City is a walled city. Like, part of it, my simple brain just goes, oh, isn't that because it's French? But but like, we have French places in America that were originally part of French colonies, and we don't have walled cities. So
New Orleans is not a walled city.
No. So I'm not actually sure why Quebec City is a walled city. But there is this beautiful hotel, the Chateau Frontenac. I completely apologize. I'm sure my French was absolutely horrible there.
You got Chateau right.
Chateau. Actually, I'm sure they're probably like, that's not how you pronounce it. I apologize. But anyway, Chateau Frontenac, sure, we'll go with that, was built in 1894, so it's now 125 years old, but it still welcomes guests. And I actually first saw this because it's, I believe, it is the most photographed hotel in the world.
Okay.
And I actually saw this in a drama. But I will tell you more about that drama after this short break.
Oh, man.
So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Welcome back. You're listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast. And today we're talking about Quebec City, and the chateau, whose name I will not butcher yet again. But
you left us hanging. You promised us drama.
No, a drama.
Oh.
So that's what they call shows in Korea. Scripted shows, I guess I should say, that are actual like acted out dramas. They're just usually called dramas, not like, specifying by genre or anything. They're just all one drama.
Words.
Drama and drama. But in this drama, the main male character had the ability to go through any door and come out on the other side of any door he'd ever been to. Oh. So he travels from Korea to Canada in an instant, which I would so love. That would make travel so much easier.
Nice. Yes. It's like apparating, although it sounds less painful.
Right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't think he has a way to splice himself unless he gets his arm caught in a door. I don't know. But anyways, in this drama, he decides to go to Canada on a whim because he had been there in he's like immortal. So he's lived hundreds and hundreds of years. And so they go actually to Quebec City and to this hotel. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, that place. Oh, I so wanted to go there.
Wait a minute. Wasn't it you who was telling me a story about the character in either a movie or a book who was Japanese and moved to Canada? What is with you and the Canada-Asian connection?
I don't know. I mean, I know there are a good number of Asian immigrants, but I think a lot of those are more in Vancouver, which I'm sure we'll talk about on some other episode. But in this one, the chateau, they shot it very pretty. And again, it's the most photographed hotel in the world for a reason. It looks like you are actually in some like small European town, and the chateau is sort of on a hill. So it doesn't almost look like a hotel. It almost looks like you kind of expect that you have to like send in a card to be announced to the Lord to see somebody there or something.
Or go around back with the rest of the servants. That's where I'd have to go.
With the riffraff.
With the riffraff. That's right. Now, I would assume or imagine that because it is the most photographed hotel in the world, it would be very, very popular, and that you cannot just show up. You probably need to make a reservation quite a bit in advance.
Oh, yes. And especially because it is a 125 years old hotel. It's not made the way hotels are made nowadays for many, many, many guests. It is a big hotel. It's not, a tiny like bed and breakfast.
Right.
But still, yes, you most definitely would probably want to make a reservation. But also in Quebec City, there is the, and I'm going to butcher this too, so I apologize. Chutes Montmorency?
I don't believe you say the S. Chute Montmorency.
Do you? Well, my French. I took like less than a year of French, so.
I believe it's Chute Montmorency.
But yes, this is a waterfall actually, and it is 30 meters higher than Niagara Falls.
Wow.
I kind of wonder if this is like their version of Niagara Falls, where everyone in Quebec, when they get married, goes to the chute. And
Maybe. I've never been to Niagara Falls, so.
I know that was an old thing. We don't really do that anymore.
Maybe some people do. I don't know.
Only people around there, I suppose. Well, I mean, now you can fly, so who knows? But in the chute, there's the actual narrow pedestrian bridge across it, which looks a little a little terrifying, actually.
Yeah.
When you see the pictures, it's just like this really high thing that's higher than Niagara Falls. Let's go on this really narrow bridge across. That sounds like a great idea. But if that's not dangerous enough for you, you can also zip line.
Okay, now, I understand why there's a zip line. I get it.
You do.
Well, beautiful scenery, waterfall, blah, blah, blah. But when I think 400-year-old French village, the last thing I think of is ziplining.
I mean, technically, of course, the waterfall is not in the
exact
village. It's outside the walls.
It makes me laugh because that seems counterintuitive to me.
I mean, I'm sure they also have Wi-Fi in the walls, so
right.
Not in the walls, but within the town walls.
Just makes it sound sinister. There's Wi-Fi within the walls.
That's another mystery. I'm sure Armand Gamache has solved that one too. But if you are not going there to do your own sort of Niagara Falls honeymoon, what have you, it's also really good for families because there is a place called the Valcartier Vacation Village.
Vocation Village would be a very different place.
A work village. I don't even know what that would
find
be.
your vocation.
But this is really good for families. It's very interesting. It's an outdoor water park in summer, but then a winter playground in winter. So if you go and you look it up, there's actually a video showing people riding, the floats down the water chute in summer, but then they ride them down almost like, not sledding, because they are still on, inflatable what are those?
Inner tubes?
Sure. But the 4-person ones, that they have at water parks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't do water parks very often. Just occasionally.
The 4-person inner tubes, we'll go with that.
Raft?
No. But you get to ride that down the hills in the snow as well. So it's sort of a year-long thing. And they actually, just recently, I think in the past couple of years, offered an indoor water park as well. So even if you're I really wanted to come here in summer and go down the water, but it's Canada and winter, most definitely not going to try and do that. It's okay. They still have one indoors.
They also have the only ice hotel in North America, and I don't understand why this is a thing.
I actually don't understand why this is the only one.
I mean, and I'm sure there are people that want to do this, and it sounds fast. I love to look at the pictures of these things, but I do not have any desire to stay at an ice hotel. I don't like being cold, although I'm always hot lately, so maybe I should go live in an ice hotel, but
right.
I don't know. It just doesn't sound appealing. You want to... Why?
I mean, I'd want to go and look around and see it, and then go back to the chateau and be all nice and warm and comfy.
Of course, I also picture it being your bed is made of ice, and you're, who wants to do that?
But I'm actually really, really shocked that this is the only one in North America, just because you kind of expect that just of Canada. Shouldn't, each province have its own ice hotel? Again, from California, so not very familiar with snow and ice. So Canada and everything, of that latitude, it's just isn't it just snow and ice all winter? No? Are you sure?
It kind of depends. I mean, everywhere's got their own weather, just like here.
It's you kind of imagine they could just all have ice hotels. I think you're missing out here,
Come on, Canada.
Ontario and British Columbia. Get with it.
Newfoundland, you've fallen down.
Or, what is it? I don't actually know all the provinces, so I'll stop.
Prince Edward Island.
Yukon is a province by itself, or it's just a place? I only know the Yukon from...
cartoons?
I think it was a Disney movie where it was a strange Disney movie, but their thing was, we're from the Yukon, and they were no one's from the Yukon. I apologize, people who live in the Yukon.
Or Canada in general.
Disney did it. Yeah, I'm going to apologize to Canada for Disney as well. Just it's all Disney's fault. We'll just say that.
Okay. Earlier in another episode, it was science's fault. So we've decided
Disney and science.
We're laying blame on everybody but ourselves today.
Of course. Actually, isn't that how blame works? It's not my fault. I didn't do it.
It's not my fault.
I don't know. But anyways, if you look up Quebec City, it does sort of look like a beautiful place just to walk around, whether it's summer or winter.
Right.
I think if you go to the city's website, their sort of tourism website, there's a video just showing people strolling down this one street, and they do it both when there's snow and when there's not snow. And I'm that looks so romantic. I'm not actually sure where the street is or what's going on in the street, but especially with the snow and the way the lights are done on these buildings, I'm just like, huh.
Yeah, it's a tourist website, so they've done a very good job of making you want to go. You know, we do we plan our imaginary vacations here on the travel podcast. And have you noticed, Stacy, that many of our imaginary vacations involve strolling down cobbled streets? Right.
we have a theme.
We have simple tastes here.
We do.
Yeah, we like history, and we like cobbled streets, and we like strolling.
Well, and I was just thinking, I know on our Venice thing, I talked about my Italian lover a lot. I want a Quebec lover to stroll down these streets with, to teach me French, which is, you know, a very romantic language.
You know, the stereotype of a sailors having a woman in every port. You would just have a nationally appropriate lover in every place that you visit.
I apologize to all my imaginary lovers.
She's not true to you, imaginary lovers.
On that note, we're going to take another short break. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. You're listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast. Today we've been talking about Quebec and Quebec City and ziplining across waterfalls and imaginary Quebecois lovers, which hopefully will not be imaginary for long. But moving on past that.
You know, even though I'm married, I could still have the imaginary lovers,
you can,
right?
It's
because
imaginary.
they're imaginary.
Yeah, right.
You just won't tell my husband. Shh.
He's in a walled city. No one will see him.
He's in a walled city.
He's not walled in.
I know, but it makes it sound like you can't leave.
He's imaginary. He's tied to this point. We're clearly getting a little silly now.
A little loopy.
But anyway, so a tip I found today was that the optimal time to buy a plane ticket varies by season. And this
Makes
is
sense.
one of the, yeah, it does, but it's kind of strange when you think about what it specifically varies by. Mm-hmm. So this is based off of a study by cheapair.com, which found that depending on when you fly, there's a certain time in advance when it's best to buy the ticket to get like the best price. Mm-hmm. And that certain time in advance that there's a range of days varies, of course, from season to season, which, I mean, I get for like holidays.
Right.
So if you're traveling, you know, at Thanksgiving or Christmas, that might affect the range, but otherwise it feels a little,
Okay, but this range, I don't know. Flying in summer, the best time to book is 14 to 167 days in advance.
Right.
That is a huge window.
But I mean, summer you kind of imagine would be booked way, way, way in advance.
Right.
Because it's popular for everyone to travel. So
That makes sense. But then the 14 days...
14, right.
Right.
Let me quickly go somewhere, you know, the week after next. Right. I'll get a great deal on that for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, I usually like when they have the option, you know, if you do have some wiggle room where you just put in a range of dates and then you can look at the calendar and see what days have what prices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so if you've got the range between 14 and 167, you're good.
You're good. Most of us don't.
Right. But that also, it's better to book earlier if you're traveling in July than if you're traveling in August or September.
Sure.
Which I guess kind of makes sense because it's definitely hotter, at least here, in August and September.
And school is starting here. I mean, school starts really quite early in August, some places here. So that does make some sense.
That used to annoy the heck out of me. That's one of those things where I'm like, I've heard of things and I don't believe they were real. So like schools that start in September.
No, that was me.
Never had that.
We started after Labor Day. When I was in junior high, we started going before Labor Day. And that was like, whoa.
Wow.
We started the week before Labor Day.
No, I remember there was one school I started like August 3rd, and I was just like, I hate this. Who said school starts in September? I don't believe that ever happened. But anyways, for school in fall, for fall, the prime booking window is 21 to 100 days in advance. So a bit smaller and also both less and more far out.
Right. So 3 weeks works better as opposed to 2 weeks on the lower end. I'm sure there's an algorithm or something that figures this stuff out.
Well,
but
they just looked at, how people, when they booked and what the prices they got. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even, planning ahead. It was just looking at, here's the data of when they booked, they got such and such a price, and just looking at, where those fall on a statistical graph. But also that in fall, booking later actually generally doesn't cost you more, except around Thanksgiving.
Of course.
Which makes sense. But for the rest of that, I guess people don't travel too much around fall. So if I didn't book super early, I'm still pretty good. I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some places have fall break, but it's not as common as spring break.
There's a fall break?
Some places have fall break, yeah.
See, I just got chipped. I don't start in September. I didn't get a fall break. What were you doing, school?
I didn't get fall break either, but places have it. I have heard of it.
But that winter is the least traveled season, save for Christmas to New Year's, which also makes sense. Mm-hmm. And that's similar to fall. It's about 21 to 110 days in advance. Although, again, save for around the holidays, because those sell out like crazy.
Right.
And that spring offers the largest prime booking window, 46 to 122 days in advance.
46 days in advance. I mean, don't be trying to book 2 to 3 weeks out, folks.
I mean, spring break especially.
Yeah.
Spring break definitely raises the prices, but it also has the greatest difference between the best and worst travel day prices, which kind of sucks.
Yes.
If you did it on a bad day and then the next day it's actually really good, you're really going to feel bad about that when you see the difference as opposed to, if you did it in fall, I guess.
Right. Well, and, spring break varies from place to place. So spring break lasts for, 6-8 weeks, technically, not one person getting 6 to 8 weeks, but just it varies depending on where you live.
That places that are popular for spring break, they have 6 to 8 weeks worth of craziness.
Sorry.
I apologize, Miami. I never really did spring break, but
I went to a monastery on spring break one year. That's for a different podcast.
That's like that just sounds the complete opposite of the typical spring break.
I know.
Okay. But that also, the cheapest flights depart on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and the most expensive on Sunday.
Which, kind of makes sense.
I mean, the Sunday one does because, people are trying to get home before the work week. Mm-hmm. The Tuesday and Wednesday one, I kind of get, but then what about Monday? Because you imagine most people do want to fly out on the weekend, or they're making a 4-day weekend.
I assume people probably take Monday or Friday and make it a 3 or 4 day weekend. Right. So then Tuesday and Wednesday, it's more in the middle. People are back at work.
Right.
So that makes sense to me.
I guess so. But then the site for today is yapta.com.
Which I was looking at that and I was like, Yapta, where did they come up with that? And then I found out.
Yes, so YAPTA stands for Your Amazing Personal Travel Assistant.
I love acronyms.
And monasteries.
All right.
But YAPTA is based off a kayak. It's sort of in the same way what Allstate is Priceline is what is it that's an Allstate company? With
Esurance?
Is it? I think so. Yeah, Esurance is the Allstate company. That YAPTA is sort of like that with kayak. That can track a flight or hotel for price changes, but then sends an email when price changes are significant enough to reticket, rebook, ask for a credit or whatever. So if you did that horrible thing in spring where you bought
you got the worst
and then
day,
the next day was super awesome. If you've been tracking that flight and the difference is good enough, YAPTA will send an email saying, hey, it might be worth it to ask the airline or what have you, either to rebook this or to ask for a credit. And there's a certain price difference that has to happen before they do that. It can't just be, it changed by $2.
Is it site-wide, or do you put in, like, please notify me if this changes by X amount of dollars within a range?
By the airline's policies.
Okay.
So, different airlines have different policies of when they will offer a credit if the price is $50 or $150 difference or what have you.
Okay.
And it tells you on the site those different airline policies of what the price difference has to be before, it's worth it.
Because we all read the fine print.
I mean, yes, of course. I totally do all that before hitting agree and what have you.
Yes.
But Yapta seems really, really good for people who fly a lot, especially like people who fly a lot for business, because then especially if you have to like turn in your receipts, they're probably like, could you please? You couldn't have waited one more day during spring to book this show.
Right.
Or if you fly a lot for business and you have your own personal business, I imagine this would be really good for.
Yes.
Because you're tracking these flights, and it lets you do this with hotels too. And so it's like, if I had only known, if I had only had my magical 8-ball or whatever to say, wait 2 more days to book, but now I don't have to, I can have Yapta track it for me.
Yapta, the magical 8-ball of travel sites.
Yes, but they also actually have a specific corporate option versus the regular personal option. So again, really, really good for business people. It's free to use for personal. It has a bit of a price for corporate, which I didn't really check out because I'm not flying corporate. I don't work for a business that flies me around, sadly.
Hey, you never know. You might.
One day, hopefully, with my imaginary Quebecois, my imaginary corporate business. But unfortunately, Yapta can't track Southwest and some of the foreign airlines.
Oh, and lots of people are very loyal to Southwest.
Yeah, I fly Southwest a lot when I do fly, so that would make it a little sad for me. But I mean, partly Southwest is generally pretty good for that. That's why people fly it a lot.
Right.
Whereas with the other airlines, I feel like the price differences can be kind of crazy from day to day. So Yapta would be really good for that.
All right. Good tip. Good site. Excellent.
So yes, on that note, we're going to end for today. Thanks for listening to the GSMC Travel Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From travel to health and wellness to entertainment and life and happiness to sex and relationships. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast.